My name's Will Jimeno, retired Port Authority Police Detective with the Port Authority Police of New York and New Jersey. And first of all, I want to thank you, Shelley, for having me on here to talk about something very close to everybody's heart. Almost 20 years ago, we were attacked by cowards. That's what I call them, cowards, because they attacked people who were literally just going to work to make their families' lives and their lives better. I had been literally living the American dream. Ever since a little boy, I just wanted to be a police officer. It took me six long years to become a cop here in New Jersey because it's a very sought after position. I grew up in Hackensack, New Jersey, 12 miles right from New York City. I saw the towers growing up. New York's been part of my heart my whole life growing up. Uh, I came from Colombia, South America, when I was 2. My mom and dad brought me to this great country. I learned to love it. My mom always instilled in me, to have love for your nation. Remember our heritage, where we came from Colombia, and take that heritage and try to make this country a better place. And that's something that I always just took to heart. Went to Hackensack High School. After high school, my dad wanted me to go to college to be a doctor. I said, Dad, I'm not that smart. I said, but I wanted to give back to this nation that had given so much to my family through hard work on their part. So I joined the U.S. Navy, did 4 years on the USS Tripoli, got out. Then I started my endeavor to become a police officer. During those 6 years, I met my beautiful wife, Allison. I had I had a little girl named Bianca. And then 6 weeks, then I attained my dream January 19th of 2001, where I graduated with the 100th class of the Port Authority Police, the Centennial, at the World Trade Center at the Marriott. It was just a great day. Then I was assigned to the Port Authority bus terminal in Midtown Manhattan. For those listening that don't know, it's the largest bus terminal in the world and the busiest in the world. And I love my job. I really loved it, interacting with both residents from New York and New Jersey. Here I wanted to be a cop, and now I'm a cop in 2 states. And at the time, 6 weeks before the attacks, we bought our first home in Clifton, New Jersey. And I literally was living a dream. I had the job that I always wanted. I had a beautiful wife. I had a little girl who at the time was 4 years old. And I literally I couldn't have asked for more. I really was living the American dream. And I was working day tours, so 7 by 3. So Tuesday, September 11th was no different than any other day. I got up, got ready for work, walked into my bedroom, gave my wife a kiss goodbye. I kissed her belly goodbye. She was now 7 months pregnant with our second little girl on the way. And I walked into the next room and I gave Bianca, who was 4 years old, like I said, a kiss goodbye. And I literally would skip down the stairs to this old car with a side view mirror that was busted. And, as a rookie, you're not making a lot of money. So I had to duct tape it. I just couldn't afford a new side view mirror. And I would take off from Clifton, New Jersey to the bus terminal. Got in there early, went downstairs. And I tell everybody, I think every first responder knows what I'm talking about, but I say this as kids as well, is you never outgrow high school. I don't care how old you get, you just never outgrow high school. Went down to the locker room and it was just like high school, guys are busting chops, making fun of each other, getting dressed. And it was just a normal day. Got dressed, put on our uniforms, went upstairs, and we went to what's called roll call. Roll call is where you're assigned where you're going to be for the day. I was assigned post 35, which is corner of 42nd 8th Avenue. So I had the front of the building over there, and we went out on post. It was weird because that morning we didn't stop for coffee or anything. We just went out to post, and I stood under the awning at the doorways there on 42nd 8th Avenue. And what happens at the bus terminals, we call it the rush. In the morning you have a rush, and in the afternoon you have the rush. So that means when everybody's coming in from upstate New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, they're just coming in from everywhere into Midtown Manhattan. It's thousands of people coming through. I mean, it's like a stampede of human beings. And my job was, as everybody's job was that day, is to make sure everybody's safe. If people need information, of course, and stop any type of crime or lend first aid. So I'm standing in front of the doors, looking at the doors with 42nd Street behind me. And 42nd Street is to my right and 8th Avenue is right behind me. And I'm just standing there looking, normal day, people coming through the doors. And I remember looking to my right, to the corner of 42nd 8th Avenue, just outside the awning that's overhead. Sergeant Ross, Pat McNerney, and another officer, Sanchez, were standing on the corner. And I just happened to glance over, and I remember seeing Sergeant Ross looking up in the air and actually going like this. And I remember looking over the corner of 42nd and 8th Avenue, the intersection. And for anybody who's listening to this that's outside of New York, that's a large intersection. And it just went black, like a shadow just covered the whole intersection. And I didn't really think anything of it. Um, and I just went back to looking at people and doing my job. Wasn't too long after that our radios crackled, and they asked every officer to come back to the police desk. So they said our code 840 back to the police desk, which means everybody come back to the police desk, which I don't even think that had happened before, especially during the rush where we're actually leaving the bus terminal unprotected. So I start walking back. I walk down 8th Avenue and hook up with a fellow officer of mine, Dominick Pezzulo. Dominick graduated the academy with me, a real great guy. He was actually a teacher at Lehman High School in the Bronx before he became a cop, and just a great individual. And we started walking back in the main lobby of the bus terminal, heading back toward 9th Avenue where our police desk is. And as we're walking back, I remember Dominick saying, Will, something bad must have happened for them to call us back. I said, yeah, who knows? And everything looked normal within the bus terminal. As we came around the police desk, you come around the police desk, you can look up at the police desk. It sits very high where our lieutenants or sergeants are. And I remember looking over, and one of the things that caught my eye was Sergeant McLoughlin. Sergeant McLoughlin was a 19-year veteran, someone highly respected. And one of the things I learned in the military was follow somebody into a bad situation that know what they're doing, because your chances of it coming out increase. The percentage comes out better. And he was one of those people. I had been to some gun calls with him, a couple other calls, and he was always very authoritative, knowledgeable, and someone I really respected. But I could see concern on his face. It really caught my eye. So I just kept walking back, and we walked down the hallway and made a left into what's called our reserve room, our break room. And there was a big TV set in there, and New York 1 was on. And as we look at New York 1, all I see is Tower 1 with a big black gaping hole and fire coming out of it. Now, one of the things that we were taught as Port Authority police officers was that you're going to do the same job as the NYPD and all the departments on the Jersey side. What sets us apart was our facilities. We are a transportation oriented police department. So all of our facilities are target-rich environments. They had hit us in 1993. The senior cops would say they're going to come back, and they're going to come back to these towers. And everything that we learned in the academy is now rushing back into my mind. Like, this is real. These are terrorists. And as I was thinking that, Sergeant Ross, who actually saw the plane, yelled, "Those are terrorists." Now, mind you, this is now back 2001. Even back then, the technology on airlines, there was no way a jetliner was just going to slam into a building. That we just knew that wasn't the case. So at that point, I turned around and grabbed the payphone that was in our reserve room. And I made it a point that anytime there was something bad happen at the bus terminals, because we had to deal with gangs and stuff like that. And if it made the news, I'd call my wife, Allison, just to let her know I was okay. And I got through that day, which is a miracle because the phone lines were really bad. But I got through to her. She was working in Carlsbad, New Jersey. And I said, hey, listen, something bad happened. Not sure what's going on. She was asking me a lot of questions because we had a friend in the building, the director of aviation, Bill Dakota. And my mind right away went to Bill. Got to get Bill out of there. And she's asking me questions. And as I'm telling her, our Inspector Fields, walked into the break room, to the reserve room, and said, listen, we've commandeered a bus on 9th Avenue. We're going to start calling your names off. We're going down to the World Trade Center to help our brothers and sisters, because the World Trade Center is owned and operated by the Port Authority. And we have a commander, so we have cops there that were responding right away. So at that point, I told Allison I got to go. She always says to me, it's weird, Will, that's the one time you never said I love you. You just kind of hung up. And because we always say I love you. But I just hung up the phone, and I remember a senior officer, Mike Robles, starts walking. Dominick starts walking ahead of me, and I started walking behind him. We didn't even wait for our names to be called. We were just going, we know that our brothers and sisters needed help. People needed help. We walked down onto 9th Avenue. We got onto this commandeered bus, and we jump on there. And usually people know from Midtown Manhattan to downtown Manhattan, take a little time with traffic and everything like that. But that day we were flying. Sergeant McLoughlin was in a police Suburban with Sergeant Inspector Fields in the front and another Sergeant Feely in the back. And I remember just following the police Suburban with the lights and sirens going on. And, again, we're still on the bus. Everyone's kind of knowing what happens, but we really don't know what happens. So there's a lot of chit chat on the bus as to what happened. Some cops like, no, there's no way these are terrorists. Others were saying, yeah, they're terrorists. And Dominick Pezzulo was trying to get through to his family on his cell phone, but it wasn't working. So cell phone service was like out. But we flew down there. We were flying down there. We cut across canal and we ended up going down through the village. And it was 2 city blocks back when I remember the bus really going silent. Everybody stopped talking. We looked to our right, and 2 city blocks back, there was a gentleman in the middle of the street being worked on by an FDNY ambulance, a bus. And there was blood coming out of his head. Something must have flown back 2 city blocks back and hit this person. And that's when we all kind of like, wow, this is serious, real serious, because we're getting close. And as we pulled up a block away from Vesey, we just started getting off the bus. And I remember it didn't look real. It just looked like a bad dream. We stepped off the bus and up to Vesey Street. It was just debris. It was just terrible. I looked up and the first thing that caught my eye was the thousands of papers just floating everywhere, and it was like a gray look to everything. That's when I kind of focused on the gaping hole. And I'm like, oh my God, look at all the black smoke coming out. And then I looked at the other tower and I figured, oh, look, the corner of that's on fire. In my mind, I thought the first plane had hit and there was a debris that hit the second tower. While we were en route down to the Trade Center, we didn't know that the second plane had hit the other building. So around what I was looking at was another gaping hole. All I thought was the one tower was on fire, the other tower took a deflection, but we could have concentrated on this one tower. And as we're standing there, one of our senior officers who was actually in the 1993 bombing yelled, look, they're jumping, Officer Ronnie Delmar. And I remember him pointing up and looking, and I could see actually tears coming out of his eyes. And as I looked up, I saw people jumping out of the black smoke. When I really concentrated, you could see people jumping, and people were jumping by themselves, holding hands, and they just kept jumping. And every time they jumped, it was like my heart was being torn out of my chest, because to me, it was like throwing a pebble into a lake, and there's that ripple effect that was somebody's mother, father, brother, sister, aunt, uncle. You could just keep going down the line. And I felt helpless. I mean, because that's why I became a cop. I became a cop to actually help people, to really make a positive impact on people's lives. And here we're standing, and let's be honest. I mean, me as a kid, yeah, you always wanted to be a hero. You want to be macho. And you realize that, if you were put in this situation, if you were Arnold Schwarzenegger, you were in a bad position. If a piece of concrete hit you, you're just a human being. You realize you're tough, but you're just a human being. And this was so immense that I felt like I was standing in front of the ocean. Here we are with our shields, our uniforms, our gun belts, and I felt this big. Every time someone jumped, all I could think about was, we need to get up there, break a wall so somebody could see our uniforms and say, come on, let's go. But how do we do that? And I remember the last person I actually saw jump, because they would jump and then disappear behind building 5. And I remember the last person that jumped, it was like my eyes could zoom in on this person. He was a blonde gentleman wearing like a golf pinkish Latigra shirt, golf shirt and khaki pants. And when he jumped with his arms straight out, like as if he's on a cross. And I just remember at that point getting snapped out of it. Sergeant McLoughlin had parked on the corner of Church Street in Vesey and came running through that abyss of just debris. And he said, hey, I need volunteers. I need people that know how to use Scott air packs. So as Port Authority police officers, we're cross-trained not only in law enforcement, but firefighting, because we're the first responders at all of our facilities. So we have to know what to do as basically fighting fires, which I got to tell you was not my thing. I rather be around a bunch of bad guys than fire. I just felt very uncomfortable with fire. So I always tip my hat to firefighters, God bless them. But I just remember, I don't know who said it first, Dominick, myself, we had just graduated the academy, and another fellow officer, Antonio Rodriguez, who's another one of our classmates from the 100th. And all three of us said, well, we just graduated. We know how to use the Scott air pack. So Sergeant McLoughlin said, let's go. And the unique thing was Antonio Rodriguez had just gotten back from Portugal. It was his first day back on the job after 2 weeks vacation. And he was usually afternoons. He got switched to day tours, which he wanted to be. So in the afternoons, he could be with his family. He actually was his first day back on day tour, and this was happening. It was incredible. So at this point, there's 3 of us. Sergeant Bianca said, let's go. We're going to go in. Follow me. So we started running. Now, like I said, from where we were standing to Vesey Street, which I think was West Barkley, there was nothing. I mean, there was just debris. There were pieces of concrete, pieces of the plane. And as we started running, I remember looking back and thinking to myself, man, I'm scared. I'm really, really, really scared. Because as I look back, everybody was staging. There were cops, our cops, there were FDNY guys standing by, and everybody was waiting for orders. I knew they were going to be doing something later, but at that point, I was just like scared. And I remember thinking to myself, I took an oath, and my oath was to serve and protect. So at that point, I just kind of focused on what we're doing, and I could look at Antonio's face, I could see Dominick's face, and I could see that they were scared. Because as we're running, again, there's debris. Unfortunately, we saw human remains. It was just bad. So we got to the side of Building 5, and we actually ran past what they call the stairwell of hope, or the stairs where they kept it's at the 9/11 memorial. We ran past those stairs, got to the side door. Sergeant McLoughlin then said, Jimeno, take our PR-24s, which we carried at the time, our hats, our memo books, run up to the Suburban, throw our equipment in there, come back in and meet us in an E-room. So E-rooms are set up throughout the World Trade Center to have all the equipment first responders needs. Helmets, Scott air packs, which is the breathing apparatuses, axes, anything you can think of to respond to any emergency are in these E-rooms, and they're strategically placed throughout the World Trade Center. So I said, okay. I ran up the block, came around onto Church Street, and I looked at the Suburban. The Suburban had taken a big piece of concrete on the front end and roof, and it was crushed. That's when I started realizing, hey, dummy, there's stuff falling from the sky. And I kind of threw the equipment in, and as I looked down Church, I could see people just being herded out onto the street. Now, again, I didn't know that building had been hit. So I just thought it was really odd that building, so many people were running out. So I ran back along the Building 5 and went into the lobby, and that's where I met up with the team. At this point, Dominick, Antonio, Sergeant McLoughlin, they were putting on their Scott air packs, putting on their helmets, their bunker gear. By the time me and Dominick got in there, we were bigger guys. They didn't have bunker coats. Antonio had a bunker coat, a helmet, and a Scott air pack. At that point, Dominick and myself just put our helmets on, put our Scott air packs on. We checked each other. And one thing we promised each other right then and there, said, listen, no matter what happens, we do not separate. We stay as a team. So we started going into the mall level. And for those people that don't know what the World Trade Center was back then, it was 2 buildings. And the way you'd get to each tower was through a mall level. That mall level had stores, restaurants, also escalators that lead down to the subway and to the PAP trains. So we entered this mall level. And as we went in, Sergeant McLoughlin said, let's go. We're going down one more level to the police desk. Now, I had been to the World Trade Center twice before while working on a couple of protests. I didn't really know the buildings. Sergeant McLoughlin knew the buildings like the back of his hand because he had helped set up the security after the 1993 bombing, where to put different things and looking at different angles to protect the building. So he said, we're going down to the police desk. So I remember getting on an elevator. And I remember when we got on the elevator, I'm thinking to myself, I don't think we're supposed to be in an elevator if there's a fire condition, but I trusted Sergeant McLoughlin. We went downstairs, came out, went into the police desk. And the funny thing is, when we walked into the police desk, the French crew that you've seen the film of, they're actually at the police desk with us. They actually filmed Sergeant McLoughlin in there. You can see Sergeant McLoughlin being filmed. They didn't film us, but when we walked in, I remember there was a piece of the plane sitting in the police desk our detectives brought in. And, as a human being, you walk in and it just doesn't register. It seems like a nightmare. Like, why is there even though I know a plane has hit the building, why is there a piece of this plane in this police desk? It's just your mind's not it's trying to absorb this massive catastrophe that's happened. So at that point, Sergeant McLoughlin said, hey guys, grab a mail canvas cart, start putting more Scott air packs, more axes, more lights in, so we have more equipment. So at that point, we started putting more equipment in there, and we left. We left there, went into the elevator, went back up, and we came out to the mall level. As we came out to the mall level, we made a right, and we were going around the area where you would go down to the PATH trains and the subway, and we're coming around toward the lobby where you would make a right and go to Tower 1 or go straight to Tower 2. And the one thing I want to tell everybody that I saw that day was love. I cannot express this enough. I saw total strangers helping each other. There was a steady line coming from from Tower 1 of people helping each other. There were people who were hurt. There were people who had passed. and there were people screaming, but yet there's a steady flow of people in a line helping each other. I remember seeing a black gentleman and a white gentleman carrying a blonde woman who had a severe cut on her leg, and they're in this single file line helping each other. You know, we passed an FBI agent who was directing people out, and I thought to myself, if these civilians can be this brave, us in uniform, we need to be 3 notches above them, because they really, to me, exemplified heroism and love for your fellow human being. And so we continued on. And as we hit the area where we could have went straight to Tower 1 or made the left to go to Tower 2, we had bumped into another crew of Port Authority police officers. They were dressed like us with the same gear. They also had a mail canvas cart, and there was about 5 of them. The guy pushing their cart is also a classmate of ours that graduated with the 100th class. His name was Stuart Warren. And Stuart was a 4-year veteran of the NYPD. He was a detective who came over. Just a great, great guy. And I remember Sergeant McLoughlin talking to their sergeant. I can't remember the other officer's name because I wish I could. But I talked to Stewie, and Stewie's actually had his first little girl while we were in the academy. And we kind of just small talk, and Sergeant McLoughlin said, "Let's go." Their sergeant said, "Let's go." And I remember just saying to Stewie, be safe, bro. And we punched hands, and they left. Stewart lost his life that day, as well as the other Port Authority officers. They never found their bodies. That was tough because I knew him, and later I was blessed to be able to tell his wife I was the last person to see him alive. She didn't know that till we were together at an event, and that meant a lot because he wasn't scared. He was doing his job just like everybody that day. We just wanted to get people home. So we continued on toward Tower 2. As we got in front of Tower 2, again, for those that don't know, there were these huge revolving doors that you would go through to get into the lobby of the towers. So we stopped there, and there was a Ben and Jerry ice cream store there. So we stopped there. Sergeant McLoughlin said, "Jimeno, you stay with the cart. The rest of you guys come downstairs. We're going down to another E-room." They were going downstairs to see another one of our Port Authority officers, Jimmy Lynch. So they went downstairs, and I'm standing there, and I'm looking into the lobby of the tower, and and I could see the West Side Highway on the other side. And I remember just being, again, that feeling of being scared came over me. Here I am, 33 years old. I've been in the military, had seen some action of those 9 months at the bus terminal, but nothing could prepare anybody for what I was seeing. I saw people who had passed. I saw people that were running, screaming. I could hear gunshots because our officers were on the other side, literally shooting out windows so more people can get out. And as I'm standing there, I hear somebody walk up to me and said, "Hey, how you doing?" I look over to my left from the command center of 2, and Bruce Reynolds started walking over me. Bruce Reynolds was a veteran police officer with the Port Authority Police. He was a black gentleman, bald. And the only reason I knew him, because I had not met him, was because growing up in Hackensack, New Jersey, I get the Bergen Record. And he was assigned to the George Washington Bridge. And unfortunately, at the George Washington Bridge, we have a lot of people who take their lives by jumping off the bridge. So I would, every once in a while, I would see articles on the Port Authority police officers who stopped somebody from jumping. And I saw his picture. And one of the things about Bruce was he was so well liked by people. Even the people he would arrest liked him, because he always made it a point to even buy the people he arrested lunch, because in his mind, it was like, you know what? You never know. A little bit of kindness might change somebody's life. He grew up in the Bronx. So he was a tough guy. But he walked up to me, and he was sweating. He had a Scott Air Pack on. He said, Reynolds, GWB, George Washington Bridge. I said, Jimeno, BT, bus terminal. And he just said, "You know what, kid, today's going to be a long day, but we'll get a lot of people home." And I needed that. I needed that from a senior officer. And the unique thing about Bruce was that I think he wanted to be an Irish guy. He married an Irish woman. He loved Ireland. At the time, he was the only black officer that would walk down the St. Patrick's Day parade and color his black bald head green. He was a great character. People loved him. And I learned more about him afterwards. That's why I'm sharing this with you guys, because it's important to know a little bit about these people we lost. And at that point, he just said that to me, and Sergeant McLoughlin and the team started coming back up, and he started walking away. And he shouldn't have been in the buildings because he had like a lung condition. But that's the kind of service we have here in America from police officers, first responders, that put their lives on the line to help people. And that's what Bruce was doing. And he walked away. And the last I saw him, he was walking toward the command center of the tower there, and I could see a bunch of firefighters. I could see him. We lost him, and I believe all those firefighters. They found them, I think, the following February. Had told the detectives when they asked me who I saw last, and I told them I saw Stewart. Told them I saw Bruce. They actually found Bruce where I told them I saw him last. But at that point, we loaded up the cart. I had been pushing the cart from the police desk to this point, and I started pushing again. That's when Antonio Rodriguez said to me, Will, let me push, because if you're tired for wherever we're going to go, you're not going to be any use to us. So I thought, hey, that's teamwork, right? No big deal. All right. I had been sweating. The adrenaline's going. Again, we look like firefighters with guns on our side, and we were carrying a lot of equipment. So at that point, Antonio gets behind the cart. Now we're leaving Tower 2, and we're starting to walk this long hallway and make a left then to go to Tower 1. As we start going down this hallway, Antonio's behind this mail cart. And at that point, we actually met up with another officer, Christopher Amoroso. Christopher Amoroso was assigned to the bus terminal, but then was transferred only weeks prior to the World Trade Center. And he was one of my OJT officers. He actually just loved the job. This guy loved the job. He had a little girl at home, and Chris just was the kind of guy you would go through a door with. That's a saying we have, right? You trust somebody so much with your life that no matter what's on the other side of the door, this guy, you'll go through a door with him. And that's the kind of person he was. He actually had saved about 4 people before coming back into the World Trade Center and hooking up with us. And there's a famous picture of Christopher Amoroso of him saving a Hispanic woman with another gentleman. The Daily News photographer took a picture. If you look it up, it's at the memorial. He's the Port Authority officer that has the Nike gloves on, and he's helping a lady. And that was Chris. And when we hooked up with him, we saw that he was injured. He had taken a hit over his left eye, his left eye. And we're like, Chris, are you okay? He's like, don't worry about me. We got to get people out of here. And that's the kind of tough kind of kid he was, And at that point, we became a team of 5. So Antonio starts pushing this cart. Christopher is to Antonio's left. Sergeant McLoughlin is at the 11 o'clock in front of the cart. I'm in front of the cart directly at noon. And Dominick Pezzulo is at the 1 o'clock of this cart. And we're walking up this hallway. We're halfway up this hallway. And I remember bumping into some firefighters in the EMT, and Sergeant McLoughlin said, be careful. It was down in the B1 level, and things don't look good down there. So, he thinks that the stabilization of the building was in question. He could see things were kind of crackling down there, but nobody thought that the towers were coming down. Even today, Sergeant McLoughlin always says to me, Will, if I thought those buildings were coming down, I would have never taken you guys in there. Nobody thought the buildings were coming down. And at that point, his radio crackled after he talked to his firefighters and the EMT, and it was our inspector asking us where our location was. So Sergeant McLoughlin started to say what the location was, and that's when I heard a humongous boom. So I literally turned around from where we were coming from, looking through the revolving doors into the lobby, and I saw a huge fireball. I mean, the size of my house. And I'm standing there looking up, holding my helmet. It looked like out of a movie, an earthquake movie. Everything is shaking. I'm just standing there. I don't know what to do. And remember what I said? Follow somebody in that knows what they're doing, because your chances of coming out are much higher. Well, I followed the right person in. Sergeant McLoughlin says, run toward the elevator. Now, it's a miracle. We happened to stop. Directly to our right was a hallway that led to an elevator. So I just followed Dominick. Dominick started running. I started running. I could see Sergeant McLoughlin behind me. And what Sergeant McLoughlin saw, which I didn't see, was as the building's coming down, there's a wall of debris coming toward us. And in his mind, in his experience, what he thought was the Middle East. What do they do in the Middle East? They'll blow something up, let the first responders come in, and blow something up again to kill more people. So in his mind, he's thinking car bomb. We start running. I remember getting into that hallway, following Dominick, and that's the first time I said, Will, what did you get yourself into? Because I remember now a real big fear came over me, super big. And I could see the lights flickering in this hallway, and I saw brown stuff. And it's funny how your mind works, because it seemed like everything was in slow-mo, but I know it was happening fast. I didn't understand what that brown stuff was. What it was the buildings coming down. And for a split second, I thought I saw light in front of me. And I thinking to myself, save yourself, run toward that light. And then I remembered, no, we promised each other we would leave each other. So I saw Dominick starting to turn to the left. I followed, and that's when something big picked me up, slammed me down, and threw me on my back. And all I remember is hearing people yell. We're yelling. Uh, I'm on my back. Things are hitting us. And the first thing you do as a police officer when you're in trouble is you go for your radio. So my radio was on my left lapel. I went for my radio. I'm yelling 813, which is our code for like send everybody. I mean, you're just saying, everybody come. So I'm like 813, 813, officers down. This is Officer Jimeno, please help, help. And I'm trying to yell. And at the same time, I don't know where I'm at. I have no idea where I'm at in these buildings. And something hits my hand. I lose my radio. At that point, I started holding on my helmet. Something big hit my helmet and literally ripped it off my head. I had a chin strap on. It just came flying off. And at that point, I'm just holding on and things are bombarding. And it's weird because it felt like it was lasting forever. And then everything just went quiet. And I couldn't move. I found myself in a 45-degree angle, leaning back like on a lazy boy chair. And when I started to see things, I could see this hole about 30 feet. And it started like just real grainy gray, and lights started coming in. What we didn't know, we were right underneath the plaza. And the light started coming in, and all I could see was concrete around me, all around me. It was about 2 to 3 feet to my right of concrete, but very, very tight. And I saw what I know today is literally a wall fell on me and actually started crushing me. But underneath that wall was Dominick in a push-up position down. And about right beyond my feet, all I could see was concrete. And out of nowhere, I heard sound off. It was Sergeant McLoughlin. He was about, I'd say, 10 feet on the other side of this concrete wall. And he was actually stuck at this point on the first initial collapse. He's actually in a fetal position, stuck. And he actually says, what's everybody's condition? I said, I got a lot of pain on my left side. I can't move. Dominick said, I think I can shimmy out of here. I'm okay. He was actually okay. And he was in a push-up position down to my left side with his Scott Air Pack on. So at that point, Sergeant McLoughlin said, okay, if you can get out, get Jimeno out, and then you two get me out. So it took a little bit of time, but Dominick was able to shimmy out of his Scott Air Pack, get his helmet off, and he literally had to crawl over my face. And he got into this little void. He could barely stand up, so he was kind of crouching. And, again, there's a hole above us about 30 feet. And at that point, Dominick said, Sarge, I think I can go up and get help. And Sergeant McLoughlin said, no, you have to get Jimeno out. You get Jimeno out, and then you two get me out. And, he's thinking tactically. You don't leave any man behind. You have to get us out. And he actually made a point, like, listen, it was probably a car bomb. If you leave us, you'll never find this hole again, so you have to get us out. And I got to tell you, we had a serious conversation down there. I mean, because put yourself in Dominick's position. There's a hole where you can go out and get help, or do you follow your leader's orders and stay and do what he says? And remember, we're all family men. I mean, Sergeant McLoughlin has 4 children at home. I had a little girl at home and one on the way. Dominick had 2 children at home. At that point, we realized that we lost Antonio and Chris in the initial collapse. Chris had a little girl at home. Antonio had 2 children at home. And that was hard, losing them, because I must have yelled their names for like 2 minutes still. And Dominick said, Willie, they're in a better place. And, that was very, very difficult to accept the fact that 2 of our friends, 2 of our fellow cops, 2 Americans were gone. But Dominick at that point had to make a tough decision. And, we talked about it. And he said, Willie, I got 2 girls at home. I said, hey, man, I got 1 girl at home and 1 on the way. And we kind of talked about it. And he said, Will, I'm going to stay and get you out. He did what I would have done in my honest opinion. And he did what any cop would have done. And it's normal. And why I'm saying this is because we are human beings. So I want people to understand that if you're ever in a position, it's okay to feel certain ways. You're a human being. But we also, as police officers, firefighters, first responders, we do take an oath, and we're always there for our brothers and sisters. And that's what he did that day. He kept up his oath. He actually turned around. He started trying to dig me out. There was a piece of rebar that was wrapped around like a U shape, and on the end of it had a piece of concrete that was laying on my right side. And he would actually take this piece of concrete and rebar and move it, but it would slam back. And this happened several times. And believe it or not, I mean, I was like, yo, bro, you're fucking kicking my ass. And we laughed down there. Believe it or not, we actually laughed. In the middle of hell, we laughed. And we needed that. And, you know, we talked a little bit. He kept trying to dig me out. And when he kind of sat back down and he said, Willie, I can't get you out, man. And I remember that really scared me, really, really bad. Because I'm like, wait a second, if Dom can't get me out, we're in trouble here. And that's when we heard another boom. And that was the other building coming down. At that point, I just remember Dominick kind of crouching up, standing up, and everything was shaking. Things are coming down really hard. So I've always done this with my family. I say, I love you. That's sign language for I love you. All I could do was, because I figured at that point we're dead, was take both my hands, cover them over my chest. I love you. Because I figured if I died and they found me like this, they would be able to tell my wife we found him like this. She would know what I meant in my mind. That's what my thinking was. And I covered myself and I just braced and I looked over and I could see Dominick, just something hit him and sat him down like a rag doll. He was yelling. Now at this point, Sergeant McLoughlin is yelling because now he's actually being crushed. He's crushed so much that actually his weapon is being pushed into his body, the leather. And I could hear him yelling. Dominick is yelling. I'm yelling. And again, everything happens to seem like it was lasting forever, and then just it stopped. The second building had fallen on us. What we didn't know was we're in the epicenter. We actually had both towers actually land on us. And it's a miracle that we were still, that two of us were still alive, because at that point I looked over and unfortunately Dominick was coughing up a lot of blood, and it, you know, we were just all gray and you could see this kind of red stuff coming out of him. And he said, Willie, I'm dying. And I said, Dominick, hold on. That's all I could say was hold on. I wasn't even thinking about my pain. And I could hear Sergeant McLoughlin yelling really loud. And Dominick said, Willie, I'm dying. And, you know, don't ever forget I died trying to save you guys. I said, Dominick, I would never let anybody forget this. And I just kept telling him, please hold on, please hold on. And in the middle of him literally losing his life, his life is leaving him. He says to Sergeant McLoughlin, Sarge, can I get a 3-8, which is a break and for Port Authority officers. And Sergeant McLoughlin stopped his yell and said, yeah, you can have a 3-8. I don't know what was going through his mind that he actually said, can I get a break? In his last moments, he pulled out his weapon and he pointed up into that hole that I told you about where the light was coming in. It was still coming in. And he fired one round in a last-ditch effort to let people know we were down there. His team was down there. And I remember after he fired the weapon, he just slumped over and he was gone. And that was very difficult for me. I mean, I'm actually only like 2 feet from him. And, you know, I'm yelling, Sarge, Dom's going. And Sergeant McLoughlin, being such a professional, said, you need to focus, refocus, and start thinking about how you can get at it. And even though through his pain, he was always a great leader. And at that point, started really our fight for our lives. You know, I kept yelling, PAPD officers down. I got a big voice, as you can hear. You know, I'm pretty loud. And I'm yelling at the top of my lungs, but to nothing, because we were literally near the globe, near the sphere. We were in the epicenter. So it's like we were just alone. You know, there was nobody around us. Nobody could hear us. Nobody was coming in at that point because it's too dangerous. And the fight for our lives happened. And I said, Sarge, you know, what's going to happen to us? And, you know, this is a little bit time past. I'm yelling. He said, Jimeno, he said, basically what's happening to us is we're being crushed. We're suffering from compartment syndrome. If they don't get to us by the morning, we're probably going to die. And it was hard to hear that, but at the same time, I really appreciate it because he's being straightforward with me. So we knew what the situation was. And I said, Sarge, you know, what do we do next in the book, right? You always talk about what do I do next for the book? He goes, there is no book for this. There's no training, no nothing that could have ever prepared us for this. We literally have to fight for our lives. And that's what we started to do. And as time went on, you know, next thing you know is these fireballs start falling in, you know, and I could smell what's jet fuel. I knew it was jet fuel. Being in the military, I was on a ship, we carried helicopters. I know the smell of jet fuel. And these balls of fire started coming in. And like I said before, I don't like fire. And here they're coming on and they're starting to burn my right arm. And I knew once they caught my uniform, I'm probably going to die alive, being burned alive. And that was very difficult. So I kept yelling, Sarge, these fireballs are coming in. All he could do was be supportive, said, try to put them out somehow. And I'm like, how the fuck do I put these things out, And I just kept kind of throwing like debris at them. Somehow, some way they would burn me a little bit and then put themselves out. And this went on for a while. So if that wasn't bad enough, then I hear pow, 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 pow. And I look above me and I see sparks. Somehow, some way, Dominick's gun was going off. I don't know if it was from the heat. I don't know what it was, but there was 15 rounds left and they're firing over my head. And I could look over and I could see the weapon kind of up in a position it's shooting. So all I could do was take my hand and put it over my face, hoping that if a bullet hit my hand, it would stop it. But I knew better. It would just go right through and kill me. And somehow, some way, the gun unloads and I'm still alive. I cannot express to you how hysterical I was at that point, because I was just like, nothing left of me. Okay, I just went through losing my 3 of my friends, being crushed, being burnt, and now a gun went off. Holy shit, what else can someone take? So again, Sergeant McLoughlin, being the leader, just said, keep focused, keep focused. He understood what was going on. And then for the next several hours, it's something that I wouldn't wish upon anybody. The pain, the nightmare, it just kept going on and on as the evening went on. At one point, I could hear gunshots going off above me, which I know it's, I think it was Building 7, housed the federal building where there's ammunition. I thought we were at war. I thought our cops were in a firefight with terrorists because we didn't know anything. Our radios weren't working. I had lost my radio. Sergeant McLaughlin's radio was staticky, but he wasn't getting any reception. And as the night went on, we talked to each other. We actually got to know each other because I always knew him as Sergeant McLoughlin. He knew me as Jimeno. We started talking about our families. He told me his name was John. I told him my name was Will. He told me he had 4 kids at home. I told him I had 2 little girls, one on the way. We got to know each other. We said a lot of prayers together. We kept each other going because when one started fading away, the other one would yell. And this continued all night long. And as it was getting darker, I just wanted to give up. I really just wanted to die. And this is the point I tell people, especially people who are in a dark place in their life. This is the most important part for me in the story of what happened on 9/11, because I want to share this with anybody who is in a dark place. And going back to what you said in the beginning, there's thousands of 9/11 stories, not like mine, but yeah, they are like mine. I tell everybody, we all have our own World Trade Centers. All right. Your story is important to you as important as to mine. So I tell people, because they come up to me all the time, say, Will, I can't imagine 220 stories following you. Yeah, but when you lost a loved one, when you found out you got cancer, when you were in a car accident, whatever the situation is, it's like the World Trade Center coming down. And it's what you have to do with yourself to overcome it. And at that point, I was at a point where I just wanted to die. And I said a prayer to God. I'm Catholic. I don't preach religion, but I told God, I said, God, thank you for 33 great years. Thank you for my beautiful wife, Allison. Thank you for 4 great years with my little girl, Bianca. My parents for bringing me this great country, and my baby sister, Karen, and my in-laws. And I said, thank you for allowing me to be an American, be a cop, and doing the right thing today. And if I die, which I know I was going to, I'm okay with it. But I'm going to ask you for 2 things, Doc. One is to somehow, some way, let me see my little girl be born. That's all I wanted, and let my mother and my mother-in-law be there for her at her birth, because I knew that Allison just wasn't going to have me. And the second thing, and you can laugh at it, I said, God, when I get to heaven, because I felt everybody that day was going to heaven because these cowards attacked innocent human beings, whether you're a first responder or a civilian, we were all going to go to heaven, was just give me a glass of water. I was so thirsty. We were caked in concrete. That's the one thing that was eating me up, the thirst. And I closed my eyes and I was going to die. I was going to give up. And at that point, you can call it a vision, a dream, whatever you want to call it. As I closed my eyes to literally give up, I had a vision, and a person's walking toward me with a glowing white robe, no face, brown hair. Over his left shoulder was a pond in the back with beautiful trees, just very tranquil. Over his right shoulder was an endless sea of tall grass. And I knew who it was in my heart. To me, it was Jesus. And as he's walking toward me, what's he got in his hand? A bottle of water. I don't know if it was, Poland Spring or what it was, but I snapped out of that vision, that dream, whatever you want to call it, hallucination, with a fire in my belly. Because at that point, I realized that if I had died, if I had given up, I would have given up on my family, first and foremost. I would have given up on my sergeant because I'm close to the hole. Nobody could hear him. And if I died, they would never find him. I would have given up on my country. But most of all, I would have given up on myself. So what I'm trying to convey to anybody, if you're going through substance abuse, whether you're going through a bad relationship, whether you're a kid who's just been adopted and feels lost, whatever that darkness you're dealing with, don't give up on yourself. Because at the moment you give up on yourself, you're really letting yourself down and so many people around you. And trust me, you're loved and you're not alone. You're not alone. In whatever darkness you are in, you are not alone. And at that point, I said, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die giving it everything I have. Because that way, at least I can go in peace knowing that I didn't give up. I gave everything I had. And I owe that to myself. I owe it to my family, to my sergeant, to my country. And I wasn't going to let these terrorists win, because if I've given up, they win. And that's meaning the darkness wins. And I'm not going to allow the darkness to win. So at that point, I said to Sergeant McLoughlin, I said, Sarge, we're going to get out of this fucking hellhole somehow, some way, or we're going to die trying. And I remember him saying, yeah, we're going to keep trying. And we kept trying for hours and hours on end. I mean, it was so horrendous down there. I can't explain it to you. You know, they made a film about us called World Trade Center by Oliver Stone. And Scott Strauss, who led my operation from NYPD Truck 1, we actually brought the real people that saved us to talk to Oliver, because I said, I can't tell you from their point of view. I can tell you what happened to me. And that's what made the movie great, was bringing in the actual rescue workers. And Scott was asked by Oliver Stone, how does this look? Does this look bad? He goes, it was way worse. And Oliver's like, well, I can't make a movie if I make it any worse. And, Scott was just telling him, I don't know how to tell you. It was 100 times worse than what you see in the film. It was that bad. It was that tighter. It was that nastier. There was fires. It was really, really bad. But at that point, it was around 8 o'clock that evening when I hear in the distance, United States Marine Corps. Can anybody hear us? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm hallucinating again. I'm hearing things. And I start yelling, PAPD, officers down. And I can hear the voices getting closer and closer and closer. And it was 2 Marine reservists, Jason Thomas and David Carnes, and they were with a civilian. These men went through the lines that they wouldn't let anybody in and into the epicenter. And they found us. And I remember they came over my left side, which I did not know there was a small hole there. And they were shining a light down. And I said, hey, Port Authority Police, Officer Jimeno, and we got Sergeant McLoughlin, we're hurt really bad. We've lost teammates. And I said, when they said Marines, being Navy, I was in, my ship was amphibious. We carried Marines. I said, hey, U.S. Navy, USS Tripoli, we carried you guys. And they said, we're not going to leave you, buddy. We're Marines. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, the Marines are here. I didn't know they were Marine reservists at the time. All I know they were Marines. I'm thinking, if the Marines are here, we're at war. And that really hurt, because I'm thinking to myself, we're at war on our soil, American soil. So they were trying to see me and they couldn't see me because I'm waving my left hand, which I could wave because I was completely buried on one side. And my hand, they couldn't see because it looked like concrete. And that was so frustrating, because this went on for like 5 minutes. We can't see you. And I'm like, what the fuck? You can't see me. The light's right on my hand. So remember, I said I was thirsty. I had no saliva. Somehow, some way, I mustered enough saliva to put a little, to get rid of the concrete dust on my left hand. And I waved. And they said, we got you. And I cannot express to you the overwhelming feeling of they found us. At that point, hold on. They sent the civilian down the pile. They bumped into NYPD'er Truck 1, and that's when Scott Strauss, Patty McGee, and the rest of the team came up. The Marines stayed above me, shining a light down. That's when what I remember was them getting to me, and it was so tight they can't come snake their way down. And there was a civilian, Chuck Sharika, who came off the street, who's a former paramedic, and said, I know how to administer a medical aid. So here you have Scott Strauss, who's bald, Chuck Sharika, who's bald, and Patty McGee was behind them. They snaked their way down, and all I could see were two bald heads. That's how tight the situation was. When they got down there, all I could see was those bald heads. And I remember it was them two. Chuck was starting to work on me. Literally, I think he was using duct tape to put an IV in. And Patty McGee started putting debris away. Now, when they got there, they saw Dominick, and I didn't know this because I was just so out of it. They covered up Dominick. Patty McGee put his jacket on top of him, and they started working on me. The first time they got to me, I almost felt like giving myself up to them because I started hyperventilating because I just was like so exhausted. I mean, I could barely move. You know, during the course of the night, I tried to use my handcuffs to hit the concrete, but we had swollen up like the Michelin Man. At one point, when I used the handcuffs, I hit it a couple of times, put it down to rest, and I couldn't find it. You know, later I was able to take my weapon out and use that as a hammer. And when I put that down, I couldn't find it. When they got there, all my equipment was right there on my waist side, but I couldn't feel it. That's how swollen we were. And they grabbed the equipment, get that rid of the way. And I remember the first time Scott got to me, I was hyperventilating, and Scott said, "Listen, bro, you got to hold on. You got to still focus." And I realized that, like, you got to keep control of your body. You can't give yourself up to them. I was hyperventilating to the point I was going to give myself a heart attack. He was able to calm me down, gave me a bag to breathe. And then he said, "All right, well, we're going to start trying to get you out." And I remember the first time he touched me, it was so painful. I yelled. I mean, Scott will tell you, I yelled like a yell he's never heard before. And at that point, he stopped, and I kind of saw him like stop. And I said to myself, "Will, you're going to have to eat this pain because every time you yell like that, he's stopping. And I have to let him work." I cannot tell you the immense pain I was in every time he touched me. But they started going to work. And I kept saying to them, "Listen, can you guys get to my partner?" And I don't know why I said partner, not my sergeant. I said, "Can you get to my partner first? I'm younger in my mind. I know he's been yelling all night long because, like I said, he is now being crushed in the fetal position the whole time. I was crushed on my whole left side. And I'm thinking, I'm younger. I can hold on longer." I said, "Can you get to my partner?" And they're like, "No, we got to get you out first, and then we'll get your partner." They thought my partner was Dominick and that I didn't know he had passed. So they continued to work on me. And I don't know, we're into it a little bit. And a voice from the back says, "How's it going over there?" Sergeant McLoughlin, who was in so much pain, didn't say a word while they were working on him. He scared the bejesus out of them. And they're like, "Who's that?" I said, "That's my partner." And they're like, "What do you mean your partner?" They're thinking it's Dominick. I said, "No, it's my sergeant. He's buried further back." They were just out of their mind. So right away, thank goodness that Sergeant McLoughlin was one of our former ESU operators. He knew Patty McGee, and Scott Strauss because they cross-trained at the World Trade Center, the NYPD ESU and the Port Authority ESU. So Patty McGee says, "What, Sergeant McLoughlin, John McLoughlin?" And John's like, "Yeah." He goes, "It's Patty McGee." And Patty's Irish, and McLaughlin's part Irish. So he says, "Hey, what's it called? Green Eyes." And Irish Eyes, I'm sorry. He says, "Hey, Irish Eyes, how are you doing?" He goes, "I'm in a lot of pain. When do you guys think you can get to me?" He's like, "We're working on Will real quick and try to get him out to get to you." And that was a great feeling for me because not only are my fellow brothers in blue there, but they actually know each other. So that gave you a more uplifting feeling because at that moment, it was so important to find optimistic things. Even though they were there, I was still looking for something to uplift me. And while they're working on me, I'm thinking to myself, am I even going to make it out of here? Like, even if they get me out, am I going to survive these injuries? I have no idea. They actually had a doctor standing above us, ready to amputate our legs. And my whole rescue took 3 hours. I want to say it was well into it when they couldn't get my left leg loose. And I just said to Scott, I said, "Hey, just cut my left leg off. I can see this hole 30 feet up for me. Get me out. I can live without a leg so you can get to my sergeant." And Scott said, "No, we're going to get you out whole." And that was tough because there was an encroaching fire. They were ordered several times to actually leave us because they were so concerned with this fire that they would kill more of them. And these guys, I don't even want to start crying, but these guys said, "No, if we're going to stay with these guys, and if they die, we die with them." They weren't leaving us. It got to the point they were able to get a machine in, a small jaws of life, because they needed to lift this concrete off me. They couldn't get They had me mostly out, but as Scott describes it, I was wrapped in a cocoon of concrete, and this wall was on me. So he had to get this tool in to start working. And I remember he told everybody, listen, everybody needs to be quiet. And he had asked Patty McGee and Chuck Chirica to get out of the hole. He goes, listen, if everything comes down on us when I break this concrete, there's no use of all of us dying. And again, Chuck Chirica and Patty McGee says, we're not leaving you guys. So he worked the tool, it cracked. And I remember I could feel a little bit of movement. At that point, they're like, we got him out. We got him out. So they started pulling on me. And they still couldn't get me out. There was a piece of rebar wrapped around my left ankle. At that point, Scott was trying to get, literally got in a position like a 69 position. You know, his legs up here, he's down, his head down by my crotch, and he's trying to get everything out. He can't. That's when Chuck Chirica said, let me use this piece of rebar. Stuck a piece of rebar in, was able to pull my ankle free. And I remember they put me on the Stokes basket and they started bringing me up. I said, Sarge, hold on, they're going to get to you next. And I remember when they pulled me out of the hole, that's the first time I cried that day. I didn't cry when we got crushed. I didn't cry when the guys died. I didn't cry all evening. And I just remember crying when they pulled me out of the hole, because I looked up and I saw the beautiful sky, but I saw the smoke. And I said to somebody, I said, where is everything? And a firefighter said, it's all gone. And that's when I cried, because I felt like we failed. You know, I saw so many people still in the mall level, and I felt like we failed. And at that point, Sergeant Cottrell from the Port Authority Police spit on my name shield, called off my name. You know, my name is Jimeno. He called it Jimeno. He goes, we got Officer Jimeno out. And they started passing me down this long line of rescue workers. I remember all I could do was with my right arm, just start grabbing patches, Port Authority patches, NYPD patches, FDNY patches, Orange County, New York. People were coming from everywhere. And I kept saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And as they started pulling me down, they sent me down to the ambulance. When they got me down there, they put me in there, and they were going to take me to Bellevue Hospital. And again, I grew up in Hackensack, New Jersey. Hackensack Medical Center is a great medical center in Bergen County there, where I grew up, literally down the block from my parents' house. And I requested, can you guys take me to Hackensack? You know, they're like, shut up, we're taking you to Bellevue. That's where you take the President of the United States in New York. If something happens, you take him to Bellevue Hospital. It's awesome hospital. So we're going down to the hospital. I had Officer Bruce Kent with me, who was taking my necklace off. That was a gift from my parents, with a shield, my shield off, my ID. And they took me to Bellevue Hospital. When they got me to Bellevue, they opened the back doors of the ambulance, and I remember them pulling me off. And that's the second time I cried. You know, I think it was a little bit before 11:30 that evening. And as they pulled me off the ambulance, I see all these doctors and nurses standing on. And I'm like, where's everybody? And they said, you're it. And I started crying again, because I realized we lost a lot of people that day. And they pulled me into the room. They started working on me. I mean, they were buzzing around me, all these nurses and doctors, and I passed out. You know, next thing you know, I wake up. I want to say possibly the next day or 2 days later. They have me literally immobilized in ICU with a tube down my throat that literally was, rocks were still coming out of my throat. Apparently, I had inhaled so much debris that the doctor had asked my wife, is he a smoker? And she said, no, because his lungs look like he's been smoking for 30 years. They literally were pulling debris and particles out of my lungs for a couple of days. I could actually hear it coming through the tube. It was crazy. You know, they finally got my sergeant out the next morning. I think he came out around 7 a.m. So he was buried almost 22 hours. I was buried 13 hours. You know, the ordeal was, the hospital stay was something you could take 3 hours talking about that easily. It was horrific. We were fighting for our lives. We were kept secret for a long time. Once we were out of the hospital the following year, we were still in wheelchairs. Sergeant McLoughlin and I went back to NYPD Truck 1 to say thank you. We went there on the day, and I remember going down there, and those guys told us, do you guys know that you're the only two to survive from underneath the World Trade Center? And that was a shocker, because no, we didn't. We were so busy trying to fight for our lives, trying to recover. We didn't know all those little facts. And what was sad was I could see the pain in their eyes. They're like, we searched for survivors for about 3 to 4 weeks after, hoping we can find people in voids like we found you guys. And they're like, you two are the only two to survive from underneath the World Trade Center, which was a shocker. You know, my mom always says, I can't believe I brought you here as a child from Colombia, and you're one of two people to survive from underneath the worst attack in U.S. history. But with that said, you know, what I've been able to do with the experience of September 11th is not look at the bad, look at the good. And the good for me, 20 years later, is expressing to those of us who lived it, but more importantly to the new generation that weren't even alive, you know, uh, is to express to them there was bad on 9/11, but there was so much good. How Scott Strauss, Chuck Sharika, Patty McGee, and all the rescue workers put their lives in line to come and get us. You know, we were just trying to do our job and get people home. These guys were able to bring us home. You know, on that day, almost 3,000 people lost their lives. We're just the very fortunate ones that were able to make it back. But with being fortunate, I feel it's my obligation as a survivor to tell the tale of what happened that day as as a vehicle of what I saw there. Like I talk about so much love within the trade center, total strangers helping each other. You know, we're here going through this past year, 2020, which was a tough year for us between COVID and all the political chaos, racism. Well, guess what? On 9/11, that all went out the window. I didn't care if you were black, white, Spanish. All you cared about, there was another human being there. You know, and I tell people I didn't get to experience September 12th because I was fighting for my life for months. But everybody tells me how the world just came together. People loved each other. What I remember was at Bellevue Hospital, the first 2 weeks. And if everybody knows New York City, Bellevue Hospital usually has shooting victims, stabbing victims, mugging victims for 2 weeks in ICU. Not one shooting, not one stabbing came. The doctors were amazed. They're like, this really affected everybody, where people really just were being kind to each other. 2 weeks, the first stabbing victim came in. But Phil, for 2 weeks, people were kind to each other. And you know, that's what I want people to understand, that what the terrorists didn't foresee was how they were trying to destroy us. What they did was bring us closer together, you know. And as a survivor, I feel it's my obligation to tell that to people, not only to give them inspiration, but also let them know that after tragedy, there is good. But sometimes getting to that good is a long, long road. So not only did I have to deal with my physical recovery, it wasn't until about a year later where I started feeling the mental problems, the post-traumatic stress disorder, the PTSD. I was so busy with physically getting better that once I got home, the darkness, as I call it, started creeping in. Mine was anger. I was angry. I was angry that to see my friends die. I was angry that I wasn't able to really save anybody. I was angry that I wasn't able to, as a man, do more, fight more, you know, my situation. And I was starting to take it out on my family. I really was. I mean, I was angry, um, blowing up at the silliest things. Like, the simple thing I would blow up is I can't find a remote control. I'd start cursing. I'd start just becoming a different person. And this continued on for a while. And I remember what really changed it for me was one night, Allison, my wife, you know, now we have our little girl, Bianca, and now we have a newborn at home. By the way, you know, I was able to be there for the birth of my little girl, Olivia. She was born actually on my birthday, November 26th. And I was in Kessler Rehabilitation Center. And they told me, if you work hard enough, we'll put you in a wheelchair and get you there for the birth of your child. And I did. I worked hard and I was able to be there and see her be born. So you would think, hey, this guy, here you are, you survived September 11th, you're home, you're still in your new home, things are good, but they weren't. They were actually going south really fast. And so there's a newborn in the house. And at this point, I'm literally, this is more than a year later. I want to think it's almost toward the following year. Can't even remember, to be honest with you, but I was able to walk. I was walking with Canadian crutches, and it was an evening. I don't know what the fight was about, and it wasn't really a fight. It was just me being an asshole, to be honest with you. You know, the darkness, the PTSD was really controlling me, and I was mad about something. And it was early in the evening, and I was so mad. And I looked at my wife, and I've never raised my hand at a woman. And I remember getting so mad at her over something. Again, it could have been just can't find a remote control, or something just pissed me off, and I picked up a shoe, and I was gonna throw it at her, like really beam her in the head, and I caught myself like, "Hey, who the fuck is you? Who are you?" I dropped the shoe because I saw Allison looking at me, I saw Bianca looking at me, and I just got in my truck and I drove up to the country. I'm a big outdoorsman. I love bow hunting. And I actually went to the field where the day before 9/11, I was thinking about taking a personal day instead of going to work to go bow hunt. So I drove up to this field and I just sat there and I really thought about it. And I said, you know what? This is not who you are. And at that moment, I made a decision because I started thinking to myself, I think about people who are around people who drink or have drugs and their parents. A lot of times those kids end up getting into those bad habits. They're watching, they're learning, they don't know anything else. And I felt that if I wasn't a good father, if I wasn't a good husband, my kids would see that. And somehow they would be affected. And essentially the terrorists, through me, would reach another generation of Americans and destroy those lives. And I said I wasn't going to do that. I had already, through the police force, talked to like our police psychiatrists, our therapists, and I just wasn't feeling comfortable with that. I was really just kind of denying the PTSD. I'd be like, I'll figure it out. I'm okay. Because you can't get forced to talk to people. And I did go to therapies, but I just wasn't getting anywhere with it. But that moment with Allison really changed me. I came home, I went upstairs, and I went into Bianca's room, and I said, Bianca, does daddy yell a lot? And she goes, yeah, daddy, you scare me sometimes. And I said, no, I got to do something. So at that point, I sought different people to talk to. And it took me a while. It took me several people because I tell everybody, if you have a darkness, you need to express it with someone. Find somebody who's qualified that can help you. And sometimes even a qualified individual, it might take 3, 4, 5, 6 people to find someone you're comfortable with that you make a connection with. Just because someone's a therapist doesn't mean they're going to work out with you. And I want people to understand that because I don't want you to go to a therapist or go to a psychiatrist and you don't like that person or feel uncomfortable and give up. You keep trying, you keep pushing until you find that right person. I was lucky enough to find someone that I was able to connect with, talk to, went to a lot of sessions with, and just kind of talking. And a lot of times I felt like I was getting nowhere. Till finally I kind of realized, she had told me, listen, this is something you're going to live with. You have to learn how to control it. And that's what I started doing, learning what the triggers were that were going to make me angry. Because most of the times after I blew up, the regular Will in me would say, what the hell did you get mad about? And you realize some bullshit. It's just the post-traumatic disorder getting you going. And once you lose control, you're another person. Now, there's all different types of PTSD. There's the anger, the depression, the loneliness. There's all different types. But it's something that you need to address because you know what? I deserve to be happy. If you're going through darkness, you deserve to be happy. I always tell, I was lucky enough that helped me too is talking about it. And really, believe it or not, it's children. Children are the one that helped me to start speaking and do my speaking engagements. I don't do it for a living. I get called by word of mouth. I'll go to one speaking engagement. People say, hey, we'd like you to come here and come here. And over the years, that's the way it's been going. But how it started for me was in 2003, my next door neighbor in Clifton said, would you come to our school? The kids are scared to get on planes. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to say? It's like, I don't know. Say something. You survived the towers. You're an inspiration to many people. And I didn't look at myself as that. I just looked at myself as a lucky person to be able to be home with my family. So I put on my uniform and I went to the school. And I remember one of the things that I was going to talk to them about was Antonio Rodriguez's wife, Christina Rodriguez, told me that they were asked to come to Portugal because they were going to honor Antonio for his courage and his sacrifice. But her children didn't want to get on a plane at the time. They said, we're scared because of the terrorists. And she told her children, we're going to get on that plane. We're not going to allow the terrorists to win and control our lives through fear. And I remember that was so powerful. Don't let fear control your life, And I remember going there and telling these kids that we're all going to die one day. But if we live our lives through fear, fear wins. And in our case, the terrorists win. So every time you're scared to get on a plane, those terrorists that attack us, they win. And I said, kids, just live your life. The day you're called to heaven or the day it's your expiration date's up, that's it. There's nothing we can do about that. But what we can control is how we live today. And one of the things I share with children and everybody is, if you're lucky enough to live till 90, there's 365 days in a year. So if you multiply 365 times 90, you'll see how many days you have left on this earth, how many days you have. And I'm not going to do the math for everybody. 365 times 90. Part of that time, we're infants. We're in diapers. And if we're lucky enough to get to 90, sometimes we're back in diapers. That time we have on this earth, it's not that long. It really isn't when you do the math. So why not live your life in a productive, brave way by not allowing fear or any of these unfortunate darknesses, from substance abuse to PTSD, to child abuse, to the political world we're living in, control our lives. You got to fight for the good things. I tell people, listen, stop watching all the news. Turn the news off. I haven't watched news in 3 weeks, and I feel good. I know what's going on in the world, but I don't get focused on the negativity. All that bad noise really intrudes in our life. Focus on the good things. Focus on the things that are going to make you happy, that you're going to flourish. As a survivor of 9/11, I try to do that every day. And I'm not perfect. I fail many, many times at not living a fulfilling day. But I also know that every morning that I get up and I can breathe and I can see the sunrise, feel the rain, feel the snow, feel the heat, feel the cold, is a gift. And I can't express this to everyone. Your life is a gift and you are important. So if you're out there dealing with darkness and feeling that you're not an important person, you're wrong. You're that person that if we lose you, that stone is thrown into the water and that ripple effects. You've touched many lives. You touched many, many lives. And I want you to understand that you owe it to yourself to better yourself every single day. So if you're struggling with PTSD, substance abuse, or any other form of darkness, you keep fighting. That's why I did this book, Sunrise Through the Darkness, a survivor's account of learning to live again beyond 9/11. This book goes into detail as to what happened that day on the 11th. But more importantly, it's my recovery from the hospital to home and dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. This book's going to be out in August. We're finishing it up now. And I got to tell you, even I learned things from this book from my wife, because your family starts to take on what's called secondary PTSD. And it doesn't have to be that you had 2 buildings falling. Understand, post-traumatic stress disorder can happen to anybody. You could be a civilian and be in a bad car accident and you have PTSD. A lot of people want to associate PTSD with soldiers and first responders. This affects thousands, if not millions of people. And that's why I keep telling people, you're not alone. Perfect example is Chuck Sharika, who helped save my life. He was a civilian. He never felt comfortable being around the firefighters and cops. And I would say, why? He's like, well, I'm not one of you guys. I said, hell yes, you are. You don't have to be wearing a uniform. What you did was so heroic, and I always told him, you're my brother. We love you. You don't have to be a cop or firefighter, to feel part of something, So for all of us who are dealing with the darkness, whether PTSD or whatever other darkness you have, we're all one. And understand you're not alone. There's thousands upon thousands of people out there today dealing with darkness. And I'm here to tell you that you're not alone and that I want you to seek help and I want you to be happy because you deserve to be happy. And I tell this to everyone. Don't let negative people be in your life. Start letting negativity leave them. All right. And a lot of times people that are being negative actually are going through their own darkness and that's the way they're expressing themselves. So I tell everybody, when you find yourself being mean to somebody, why are you being mean? Maybe you have an issue you have to deal with, and I'm not that silly to think that the whole world is, just a beautiful place. There's a lot of bad things that happen in the world, but there's a lot of good things. And I always tell people there's more good in this world than bad. That's why I always love the quote by Edmund Burke, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to stand by and do nothing. Well, I'm here to tell you there are good men and women always willing to step up to help. And that means there are people out there that are willing to listen to you, help you, clinically help you. So if you're going through something really, really bad in your life, seek help. And as my mom used to tell me, don't use sympathy for yourself as a crutch. So that what she meant by is, listen, as a Hispanic person growing up, my mom told me, I don't want to hear about you being a minority. You're as good as the next person, whether black, white, Asian, whatever color. It's about work ethic. It's about giving of yourself and working hard toward a goal. So if you're out there right now and you're in the darkness, work toward the goal. And I love this picture that I have on the cover of this book is sunrise through the darkness. Work toward the sunrise, because I think about the sunrise every single day. Every day that I'm able to get up and see a new day is a gift, and you deserve the gift of life. So anybody out there that's struggling, I hope that if you heard my story, what I talked about today, a little something sticks in there. Because when I go speak to children and military groups or different, I tell everybody, listen, I'm going to talk right now. It's going to go through one ear and out the other. I hope something sticks between your ears that's going to help you. And I'll be honest with you, I've been blessed to have feedback over the years. And I've been trying to put this book together for about 8 years now. And I ran into the problem that the publishers were like, hey, man, Will, we love your story, but they made a movie about you. And I said, well, yeah, but it's not about the movie. It's the really hard road to recovery that I really want to focus on. And what kept me really motivated was all the people that would come up to me after I do speaking engagements. And I feel like almost a priest. They would share such heart-wrenching stories. And they would tell me, listening to you gave me hope. You know, I always talk about having faith, hope, and love, those three things. Having hope, never give up hope. Having faith, and I don't preach religion. If you don't have a religious faith, have faith in yourself, and have love. Love for yourself and those around you. Those three things will keep you going. And people would come up to me and tell me their stories and tell me, hey, you know, I really needed to hear what you said today. And I'm going to share with you 2 instances that really motivated me to do this book. One happened in 2010. I was asked every year to come down to Fairleigh Dickinson University to speak to this group. It's called Latino Promise, and great group of people every year. And we were at war still. And I remember I always would ask, who's the veterans in the room? And, you know, they'd raise their hand. And I always ask, you know, who was in theater? And what I'm trying to convey is, you know, who saw something nasty without actually asking them or intruding on them, especially in public. And I get a couple nods. So, you know, the combat vets, the people who had seen some bad things. And I remember, you know, afterwards I would talk to people, and a couple guys would stick in my mind. I go back the following year, and after I do my presentation, do the Q&A, this one gentleman stands in the back and he says, hey, Will, I don't know if you remember me. I was here last year. And I said, yeah. I said, Marine, Fallujah, right? He's like, yeah. And he goes, I came back here to share with the class that I want you to listen to Will, take something away with it. He goes, several months after I heard Will speak, he goes, you know, I had a gun in my mouth and I was going to kill myself. You know, he had seen some really bad stuff, and that's really tough for someone to get up there and share that. And I remember he flattened me. I was in tears. Everybody was crying. And he just said, I went and got help, and I'm happy today. And that really, like, just, wow, you know, really kind of gave me the thrust to do this book. And then a couple of years ago, when I'm still having a hard time putting this book together, I went and spoke to a large military group. And I remember a female come up to me. She was an African American. She walked up to me, and there was a long line of people waiting. And they would give us space to talk. And she said to me, thank you for coming to speak. And I was asked there by their military group to come out there. And she said, you know, I needed to hear this. I just lost my job. And I forget which way it was, but, you know, I have a son, I believe, he told me he tried to commit suicide recently. And his daughter and her daughter was a drug addict. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, you imagine being a parent, you just lost your job. You have one child trying to commit suicide, and the other one's dealing with substance abuse. You know, the world's coming on you. So my point is, we all have our own World Trade Centers, but we have to push forward and survive them. And you can, because if you see my left leg, it's torn up. It looks like a great white shark ripped it apart, you know, from the crush injuries. And I had to learn how to live again physically, but more importantly, mentally. And again, I cannot stress to everyone out there that I want you to understand that you deserve to be happy. I hope that when my book Sunrise Through the Darkness comes out this August, you pick it up, you read it, you learn some good lessons from it. I still learned good lessons from it. I mean, like I said, listening to the chapter from my wife was was big for me because I never really took the time to talk to her about it. And this book is for those who are dealing with darkness and the the caregivers, the people that are not talked about, the people who are dealing with their loved ones who have a darkness, whatever that means. Again, from PTSD to substance abuse to have been raped. Those caregivers are actually going through a lot too, and it's important that we share that, especially 20 years later, because the lessons we learn from 9/11 are important, and there's so many lessons to be learned. Not only that day, there were bad people that day. There were a lot of good people, and there's a way to recover from tragedy. And I always tell people, if we don't find light in a tragedy, then it's just that, a tragedy, and we cannot allow that to happen. You know, we saw that in 2020, COVID was really the World Trade Center that came down on the world, and we've taken a lot of loss. We've taken a lot of pain, but I'm proud to say, as we're coming out of this, we also see how resilient we are as human beings, how we adapt, how we support each other. And it's important to remember that, because I want September 11th to be looked at as a day that darkness came into our world as Americans and really as humanity, but a day that we came together and we were able to fight that darkness and come out of it in a good way. And some of those people that show me that are people, the spouses of people who were lost, children who lost their parents, who talk about their parents as if they're alive today and share good lessons of what they remembered from their parents. And even if they didn't know their parents, they learned so much about their parents that they express how good of a person my mom or dad was, you know. And I guarantee you there's going to be tragedies in the future. So I hope that, my book, Sunrise to the Darkness, somehow, some way prepares people for what could happen in their lives. And I hope nothing ever bad happens in everybody's lives, but we all know that's not the case. So could there be a worse attack than September 11th down the road one day? Absolutely. Because evil does exist, but we always going to have good there to counter that, just like on September 11th.
I only have two questions for you, because what an incredible story. First, besides the physical residual from the crushing, do you have any other 9/11 illnesses, issues?
So I'm blessed right now that I'm not. My sergeant has been going through things, and I'm amazed at it, because we literally became part of the building. We were actually breathing. When they were rescuing me, Scott Strauss, Chuck Chirica, Patty McGee were coughing. They could not, they were like fighting to take in air. I was breathing it naturally. Somehow, some way, our bodies naturally were taking it in. I wasn't coughing. In the beginning, I was, but somehow our bodies adapted. I think about that every single day. I kind of hate to say it. I'm kind of waiting for that moment that some weird cancer or something happens to me. I try to keep healthy. I do a lot of outdoor activities. That's why I always tell people in the October, November in the evenings when I'm putting out the garbage, I take a deep breath of that cold air into my lungs, and I'm blessed. We have so many first responders and civilians that came down to help, who've lost their lives. That actually, the person I was talking to, Deborah, she lost her life several years ago because she used to go down at midnight to talk to the police officers, and she was exposed to 9/11 elements, and she actually died from, I think it was two rare forms of cancer. So the person who helped me on my road to recovery mentally lost her life by trying to help people down there, and she got ill from it. So thankfully, I have not encountered anything. I hope not to. But I'm also blessed that if I do, I look at it as I've had this many years. That's more years than so many people had. But so far, knock on wood, I'm good.
Will, one other question. Why do you think you were spared?
I always People ask me all the time, and I said, look, the only person who's going to ask me that, be able to answer that, is God. All I can do is, I always say, when I meet God, I want to look him in the eye and say, I hope I did good with my second lease. And again, I owe that to children. Uh, and the gentleman who asked me to come speak to children, I never intended to speak. I always say I'm a ham anyway. I'm active. I love people. I love being around people. But The good thing that I think God gave me a gift for was the gift of gab. And I've never, ever written down anything. Oh, excuse me. I lost my earpiece here. I've never, ever written down anything at a speech. It comes from my heart. I remember speaking to a board of education, and after speaking like I just did for an hour, uh, a professor of English came up and said, "Excuse me, sir, I never saw you look down at your notes." And I said, "I don't have notes. It comes from my heart." And I think that's why people connect with me, because they know what I mean comes from my heart. When I tell you that I love you, even though I don't know you, and I want you to have a fulfilling life, I mean it, because I was in the depths of hell. I was at the doorstep of death. And I know how precious life is. And I want you to have a precious life. I might not know you, but I want you to be happy. And I want you to be kind. And always be kind to others, because you never know, your kindness can change somebody who's in a dark place and give them an hour, a day, a month to work on it to get better. So remember, always, always go toward that sunrise when you're in darkness. And I appreciate you having me on here. I just want to tell everybody, the way we remember everybody from September 11th is by being kind every single day. If you're being kind, that's what everybody who lost their lives, I know that's how I feel, was just make the world a kinder place.
Thank you, Will.